All right, so talking to Commissioner David Harper. Tell me about yourself. Where are you from? How long you been here?
Great. Grew up in Nashville.
Okay,
Moved here in 2000. Married 25 years this August.
that's awesome.
So live in the Sango area.
Mhm.
First, we lived in Hilldale, but moved out to Sango in 2006.
Okay,
So I've been out there since then. Financial advisor in town. Been a financial advisor for 23 years now. Financial industry about 35 years. So
okay,
long term in this area. I'm in my third term as a county commissioner
okay. And that's county commissioner for which district?
for District 15. That's out in Sango.
Okay, Sango only, or
Yeah, it's Sango.
okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know if it bled over into anything.
not really.
Okay,
And back in 20, I'm thinking 22, we redistricted.
okay,
So I got a lot of the area that's way out in the county. So I go out to the county line now.
okay.
So I have a lot of 90% of my district is outside the city limits, about
Mhm.
10% inside the city limits.
Okay,
So
okay. So tell me, what does a county commissioner do?
everything
Okay.
seems like. Basically, we pass the budget.
Hmm.
We look at the budget for all the departments in the county. We pass that every year. We also oversee the budget for the school system since we
Okay,
have a consolidated school system budget.
right.
Um, we pass that as well. Typically, and we look at different laws. We call them resolutions, is
Hmm.
what we pass, and in the county that regulates the way things work in the county.
Okay,
We oversee, if you're looking at different things that we oversee the highways that are outside the city limits.
okay,
Okay. And that would not be the highways that are state highways. But other than that, the roadways that are outside the city limits. So there's a lot of roadways.
it's pretty interesting how confusing that is to a lot of people, whether it's city, state, or county, when you're traveling on something and then where it changes. Because I know we talk about, things in real estate areas. Well, this is a county road. Oh no, that's actually a state road, but it may be a city road as well.
It's very confusing. It's very confusing. And it seems like the state, in our opinion, hasn't been as quick and efficient on getting our roadways
Hmm.
expanded or redone as we'd like. I think pretty much you never get 100% agreement, but I
Yeah.
think our citizens agree 100% on that particular fact.
So what's the most difficult thing that y'all are working on right now?
Most difficult thing, I think, is I've been working about 4 years now on getting an intersection at Excel Road and Highway 12. And that's in my district that we've been
Hmm.
working. We funded what we needed to from the county about 3 years ago, and we have had no progress on it yet,
That's
as
a
of yet.
that's a pretty dangerous intersection, because I know
It's a very dangerous
because I go
intersection.
through there all the time when you got that merge in from the backside of
Hmm.
the
Yeah,
Dollar General,
yeah.
and yeah,
It's just, and a lot of times when you have more rural roads
hmm,
that you may have had, rather than your typical 4-point intersection,
yeah,
you may have other roads coming in at a diagonal.
yeah,
It makes it very, very confusing. And we've seen that in several areas. We had I think we called it, basically, we called it like a highway or roadway, where we were looking at different intersections that were outside the city limits all over the county,
okay,
not just in my district, but all over the county,
hmm,
looking at some of the most dangerous ones to see if there were things that we could do that could make those better
okay,
for our citizens. This was one of the roadways. It was one of the top 12 intersections
really,
that were among the most dangerous.
huh,
Another one is down on 41A as you go south of town towards exit 19.
Mm-hmm.
You'll come over a rise. It's at Mount Herman.
Yep.
That particular intersection is even more dangerous than the
Really?
one I'm talking about.
Really?
And by dangerous, I mean more people have been killed in accidents there.
Huh.
And there were both of those intersections in the last 10 years. We've had more, I think it's 3 or 4 fatalities at each of those intersections.
Oh, wow. I
So
didn't realize that.
obviously it's pretty important to get those fixed.
So do we in our district have more bad intersections than others, or are we just kind of on par?
No, I'd say we're about the same.
Okay.
About the same. There are several roadways. If you're ever out at Montgomery Central,
Mm-hmm.
when you go past the school complex,
Yeah.
and you turn that roadway there, and that's obviously state highways,
Right.
but that one's a really bad intersection as well.
What about that one with Martha's Chapel, where it veers?
Yes, that's one of the bad ones as well.
That's the one I'm like triple check.
Yes, that's
like every time
that's a very dangerous
yeah.
intersection. But there are several, and it's all about, a lot of times it may be a slight aligning that needs to take place,
right.
or it may be a sight distance problem.
Okay.
That happens. The city, for instance, took care of, I think it's not 7 Mile Ferry Road, but on the bypass where they put the traffic light up,
Mm-hmm.
there's a Dollar General there now.
Mm-hmm.
To the right was, what's the ferry road? You know which road I'm talking about.
I know you're talking about, yeah.
And what they did is that hill was so high that it caused a sight distance problem.
Okay.
So Edmondson Ferry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Edmondson Ferry. At Edmondson Ferry, so they shaved that hill down a little bit.
Okay.
When they put the traffic light in, and it's helped a lot. So a lot of times it could be some subtle change like that can help. But
yeah, we had somebody from county streets that came in and talked to us at one of our governmental affairs committees, and he offered a lot of insight, just things we didn't know, and just some of the projects and how they're taking forever working with the state. And I mean, he let us know that like Middle Tennessee is, Chattanooga all the way up to us, and so we're all fighting for the same pot of money.
yes,
Because there's 3 districts, right?
Yes.
So there's, west, middle, and east, and we're all fighting for the same money. So we're competing against Nashville and Brentwood and Chattanooga and all that.
It's difficult.
You would think they'd break it up a little bit better.
Yeah. And I talk to people all the time about roadways. I said, well, if it's not a highway, why can't we expand that road?
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is we can. However, here's the problem that we run into. To expand a road involves taking someone's property.
Mm-hmm.
And when you take someone's property, the law says you have to pay them for it. And a lot of times people don't give that property willingly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So then you have to go through a condemnation hearing, which makes everybody unhappy.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of those. Yeah. So, all right. So you're taking somebody's property. How is fair market value determined on that?
They go through appraisal process, and I can understand if you have property that you might not want to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not want to sell it at any price.
Right.
I mean, that's very understandable.
It's my land. I want to keep my land. Yeah.
I want to keep it. So that becomes a problem. I tell people all the time, I said, we can widen property, but the minute we start to acquire that property,
mm-hmm.
They're going to show up at our county commission chambers.
100%.
And they're going to not be happy about it.
And signs and everything.
So it kind of puts us in a bit of a box regarding that. So how can we do that? We can't build roadways on top of other roadways.
Right.
To have multiple lanes, that's just not feasible.
No.
So it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge.
I went to a couple of the meetings when Powell Road was a very big discussion. Because we lived at the very end of Powell Road and Riverbend Landing.
Yes.
And it came down when they were talking about the strawberry farm.
Yes.
Talking about that one.
The McCraws.
Yep. And so I've been to several of them, and it's interesting to watch. I mean, none of them have like truly affected me directly, but people definitely get passionate about it, and I can understand that.
Yeah. one of the things that happens, I'm chair of the zoning appeals board
Mm-hmm.
for the county, which that means if someone appeals something outside the city limits, they'll come to our board.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something as simple as a setback,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be a side setback. There could be a lot of reasons. It could have been a person built a storage building outside their property lines, and now we have to resolve that conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a lot of things that happen.
Right.
But one thing I can tell you is a lot of our roadways, which were originally country roads,
mm-hmm.
and then became roadways, and a lot of times it made sense for you to, if you had a farm, you're going to locate your house as close to the roadway,
right, so you have more
as
land.
you could, right? That way you had more land to
right.
farm,
mm-hmm.
all that sort of stuff. Like, for instance, with the McCraw situation, that house was very close to the existing roadway on
right.
Lodgeview Road. In other words, the setback requirements were being violated. And that's why it becomes a lot more difficult
mm-hmm.
to widen roads, because then no one wants a roadway that comes within the first 10 feet of their house.
Yeah.
You
It's
don't want to drive down the road and then,
right.
oh, I'm at my house.
It's like that. It's like that one building going out towards Dover, taking the back way along the river.
Yes.
Like it's like 2 feet from the doorway.
Yes.
And you pass by.
And that's what happens over time, is those setbacks. And that's why it's really important, when we have a 30-foot or a 40-foot setback, to make sure that the buildings, when they're constructed,
right,
actually adhere to that, because it's really important. Maybe not so important right now, but 10, 20 years later, it's really difficult to fix that or resolve it. You can't just move a house.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't just pull my truck up to it and just move it. It doesn't work that way.
Well, we could talk traffic all afternoon, because that's what
we
people love to discuss. So let me ask you then, when you first got elected, what was that like? Getting elected, and now you have a steep learning curve, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So,
I had an advantage, because when I first got elected, I always tell people it takes you a year to 2 years to become pretty competent.
mm-hmm.
And by competent, I mean knowing who to call.
Right.
Like, if I've got a problem with this, who do I call to try to resolve it for the citizen? It takes you a while to understand all that.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes 1 to 2 years to do that. Being a financial advisor for my regular job, being able to look at budgets, analyze financial situations,
mm-hmm.
that comes pretty easy for me.
Okay.
Because I already have that training. But for a lot of our folks that don't have that backing, right now there's 2 of us that are in the financial world as advisors on the commission. So 2 out of the 21. The other 19 probably don't have the financial experience we do.
Yeah.
So we tend to be on the committees
for budgets
that need that.
Well, that makes sense.
Pressure.
I mean, playing to the strengths.
Yeah.
I mean, that definitely makes sense.
But it takes a while, because understanding the budget process can be pretty difficult.
I'm sure it's very hard to convey that to the average citizen, like what all this means and, what's affecting what.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, I mean, I've looked at it, whenever it's, posted out there and whatnot, and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, I look at the federal government whenever they post their stuff from the CBO and whatnot. Yeah. And I'm like, no.
There's a common theme even today that people think, because we're a growing community,
mm-hmm.
when we have people move to our community, now we have more people paying taxes, that somehow the existing folks that are here should see their taxes go down. And that's not typically the way things work, because as a government, we have to supply services
mm-hmm.
to more people now,
right.
and there's more cost involved in that.
Right.
We have a lot of departments that are consolidated. For instance, our EMS department. EMS department covers all of the county.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people that we have in the county, the more calls we get.
Mm-hmm.
I could show you the call volume for EMS, and it continues to go upwards. We're averaging about 7 to 8% increase in call volume on a yearly basis.
Oh wow!
So that's a big deal.
Okay.
You know?
So I do want to ask you about the Regional Planning Commission and the RPC, or sorry, and the Comprehensive Plan. How are we going to balance the growth of commercial and the growth of residential based on the Comprehensive Plan? I mean, I've read through it, and it looks like we're behind on multiple things and ahead on one or two things.
Yeah.
But how is that balanced? Like, we're exit 11.
Right.
It looks like MLK is like going to turn into exit 4. There's a lot of concern. And then you look at Madison Street, there's a lot of concern. Is that going to be the same way?
One of the things I think was good is I try to tell the commissioners that they need to partner together with their city council person.
That's fair.
Which is a really good idea. Stacy Streetman, who's the Ward 10 council person, she and I have had a friendship for quite a while, and we work well together. As a matter of fact, I helped a bit in helping her take that Madison Street overlay program and push it on out towards those corridors, which is important. The overlay program basically sets some standards, so we don't have some inconsistencies in especially on these roadways. It's very important as we get closer to when we're on the highways or interstates that we have some sort of standards as far as what we're building, because it can make it very difficult. Typically, what you see on roadways, if you're looking at, say, Highway 76, you're going to have typically the way that those commercial areas would develop is you'd have some sort of commercial development, and then behind that, typically you would have higher density apartments, condos, townhomes, the like, and then beyond that, typically you would have your more single-family homes, and that's the typical way things typically work, and that's what we're seeing, and that's hopefully the idea. One of the things that's come out recently, which I think is very, very beneficial, probably about 15 years ago, there was a development that might have been even longer ago than that in Pleasant View called the Pleasant View Village.
Yeah, I've been there.
Okay.
Yep.
It was probably ahead of its time.
Right.
What the whole idea was a mixed use, and they called it a PUD, which is a planned unit development.
But it's got commercial with commercial, and then above it, it's got your apartments and whatnot. Then it's got some townhouses. And it's got single family. Yep.
And the whole objective on that, which is to make, it's kind of what you're trying to do is develop an area where the residents, if they don't work there in that area, in that commercial development, when they come home, there really isn't a need for them to go anywhere else. In other words, they don't have to go 10 miles down the road to go eat at a restaurant. They don't have to go 10 miles down the road to drop their dry cleaning off. And they don't have all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not going to start on 15-minute cities.
but
I understand what you're talking about.
And we haven't had a lot of that. So the city and the county both, on the city-wise, you can do a PUD, which is a planned unit development. And then there's on the county as well as the city, as long as it's in the urban growth boundary, you can do what's called a PUD. I think it's called an XM, which is basically mixed use. It's MXU. That's right. Sometimes these monikers get me. So it's a PUD, MXU. And that's the idea there. There's one which is going to be very large that's out there in the Kirkwood area. And that was, they called it a couple of things. I think they ended up calling it Marcelina, which is out there. It'll be next to that Kirkwood complex.
Like across the street or?
It'll be connected to it, as a matter of fact. And the concept of, and it's a very large development,
Mhm.
and it'll have mixed use. It's going to have, I think there's going to be a private school located there.
Okay.
There'll be a library located there. There'll be restaurants
Really?
and the like. There'll also be apartments, condos, single family homes, all of that out in that area,
And then they're
which
going,
would be the first really of that size
right.
in our community.
Right.
So,
But then won't they have to widen Rossview?
yes,
Okay, so that'll go to 4 lanes.
yes.
Love exit 11. Love exit 11.
Yeah. I mean, we're suffering with the widening right now at
Yeah.
76 and 41A.
I just came through that.
Yes.
Yes.
Avoid it for a little while if you can.
My office is literally right there.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's okay. I mean, it's fine. I get it. I'm not crazy about the traffic stop going right there at Starbucks and whatnot, but I understand just driving through there.
The reason being, you're trying to give those access roads so you can fuel that traffic around.
I know. I get it.
And of course, in our community, when you see more traffic light goes up, the first thing that happens is typically people get on Clarksville chat and say, why do we have these traffic lights going up?
Oh, and Lord forbid you build a roundabout.
Yes. And the funny thing about roundabouts, when our daughter was looking at different colleges to go to, she liked one over in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. So we would go to Charlotte, mm-hmm. and they use roundabouts everywhere in Charlotte. Yeah. And I was not a big believer in roundabouts until I went to Charlotte. Yeah. And we started going over there. And one thing I found is they even use roundabouts to get off the interstate exits. Yeah. And after studying it a bit, what I found out is you can utilize higher traffic flow, mm-hmm. and traffic moves better. Mm-hmm. Yep. And they can actually handle a greater amount of traffic, mm-hmm. and do it in a lot better way. As a matter of fact, a lot of areas use roundabouts in conjunction with school zones.
So yeah, we when my son was playing lacrosse, we went out to a tournament in Indianapolis.
Okay.
And I can't remember the name of it, but it's a little like, kind of like a Belle Meade right outside, mm-hmm. of Indianapolis, and all they have is roundabouts.
Yes.
Like every block was a roundabout. And I was like, man, I can't drive anymore. Yes. I was like, I just, and everyone was a little bit different. So I had to pay attention not being from there, but we never stopped. I'll give them credit.
That's the key. When you have a traffic light, mm-hmm. essentially you stop two sides every time. Yep. And then you open up, and then two sides move, and the other two sides are now stopped. Mm-hmm. But with a roundabout, you allow all the lanes to move around. And it's a learning curve.
Until you get somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. And then,
correct.
Yeah. Or they're doing laps for.
Or you put it on video, and you have people doing laps.
God bless the South.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's how that works.
Yeah. Okay. So, answer me this. How well does the commissioners as a whole work together? Because, I mean, you got varying personalities, right, and whatnot. But, I mean, it seems like every time that I've seen y'all, like on YouTube and whatnot, everybody seems to work pretty well hand in hand for the common goal. I mean, everybody wants something different for their district, but it seems like everybody works pretty well together.
I think, and this is something that not a lot of people will agree with, but I believe it. At the local level, we all want the same things. Mm-hmm. We all do. We all want better traffic systems. Mm-hmm. Okay. We want communities that are safe. Mm-hmm. We want good schools for our kids to go in, and we want good jobs. And those are the things, and those issues, it doesn't matter whether what your political philosophy is. We all want the same things.
It's just basic life.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why at the local level, you tend to have more harmony, because we're trying to work. Mm-hmm. I always say, I can tell you what direction to go to get to this objective. Mm-hmm. We may agree on the turns that we need to take while we get there. So, but we all are pretty much aligned on the things
we're trying to get.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our overall goal is good schools. How we get there
Right.
may vary a little bit, but the overall goal is this.
Right.
That,
Yeah.
That's good to know. Because that's the outward perception I have of it.
Yeah.
So
And most, I found, we may disagree on things, but we're certainly not going out in the parking lot after our meeting and trying to threaten each other. It doesn't work that way.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So another big thing in the real estate space is affordable housing.
Yes.
Tell me about it. What can be done, or what do you believe can be done in our community for it? Because I sit on a committee, I've been to different fairs and whatnot, and everybody has what they want, but nobody seems to have a way to get there, because somebody's got to take a cut. Everybody's talking about, well, the builders just lower their prices. Well, that's not exactly how that works. When things cost a little bit more, and you're talking about, different fees, everybody wants to talk about impact fees and whatnot. And then people, I need more wages. Well, I'm not making as much at this place. So what do you think?
What do I think about affordable housing? It's really interesting. I was sitting in a meeting and we were talking about affordable housing. So, well, what kind of price level do you think affordable housing is at? And in this meeting, they said 225,000 to 250,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to chuckle. I said, well, why are you chuckling? I said, because in 2006, when we bought in Sango, we bought in Savannah Chase, that's exactly what we paid for our house.
Yeah.
So today, obviously you can't buy that house for that price.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
You can barely buy a townhouse.
Right. For that price.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges is basically raw land cost.
Yeah.
Okay. Raw land costs are probably, if you look at it across the county, you're looking at 30 to 45,000 an acre for raw land, not in the subdivision, but just if you were able to purchase it.
Right.
And sometimes you can't even purchase it for that.
No.
So, that's a challenge. I typically look at a multiplier of 5 to 6 times whatever that raw land cost is, what the cost of that building would be. Then you add that to the raw land cost, and then you kind of come up with the total. The answer for us as a community is we have typically have bought single family homes.
Okay.
And typically those have been on R1 lots.
Right.
R1 lot's going to be about a third of an acre lot. Okay. And building single family homes, around 2,000 square foot homes. Mm-hmm. If we continue to do that, we're causing more and more issues throughout the county. So we have to do some things that are that would promote greater density. Not everybody wants that. It's not appropriate for everybody, but in a lot of cases, it would be helpful. So
you have a lot of that not in my backyard.
Right.
Feeling.
Exactly.
And I agree with it to certain degrees.
One of the challenges we have in zoning is the city has certain zoning classifications that the county does not. And one of the things I've pushed for a while is we have R1, R1A, and then we have R2D, which is in the county is basically duplexes, or condo, that share the same roof. Our R4 is multifamily development, is R4. Well, in the county, we don't have a designation for that being owner occupied. So typically an R4 zoning out in the county implies the fact that it'll be apartments. And most people in my area, when they see R4, they're not in favor of it.
Yeah.
So we've been trying to push for a classification that would allow for condos to be built, because that would be higher density, but you can build a condo that could be owner occupied. So at present, we don't have a zoning classification for that.
Really?
So typically, it usually doesn't happen out in the county. So
how hard is that to change?
I think it'll take a little bit of lifting, but I think it could be done. We've been talking to the RPC about it, which would be helpful, because personally as a homeowner, I would not mind having condos in the proximity to me. And I think most people are like that. They understand maybe it's not appropriate um, to have a single family home. Maybe they want to do some developments that are intermingled with your single family homes. Makes a nice kind of environment.
Okay.
But and then typically we would put apartments in the commercial development area. So because that's really where they kind of fit.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
But
so the latest news is Ascension St. Thomas.
yes.
Tell me about that. I've gone to the pumpkin patch for years since I've been here. Now that's going away.
Yes.
And
possibly.
Okay. More information on that. But what does that look like? It's right next to the Tenova emergency, outreach area. It's right there on exit 11. We have a 2-lane road. What does that look like for that?
Let's go back in history a little bit, because
it's nice to have an exit by a hospital, by the way.
Right. That's a good idea, right? Makes it easier.
Right.
But back in, I believe it was 2015, 2016.
Okay, we had just gotten here.
This was a long time ago, but there was actually a petition by Northcrest, which was a nonprofit hospital out of Springfield.
Okay.
And they wanted to build a satellite location at exit 11.
Okay.
I was the only elected official that signed their petition, actually, and it failed at the certificate of hearing.
Okay.
Basically, it's called the CON. It's a certificate of need hearing that the state has, that you have to actually go before that state board and give them reasons and show them reasons why it would be beneficial for that community to have that additional hospital.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Well, that's what's going to happen now. Ascension St. Thomas, as well as TriStar. TriStar wants to put a location at Tiny Town. Okay? Both of them are going to appear before the certificate of need hearing and make their case. Now, if they get an approval at that case, then they can start to build a location. If they do not get an approval, they cannot. And that's how that works.
Okay.
TriStar is a for-profit hospital chain. Ascension St. Thomas is a nonprofit.
Okay.
I like the idea of both of them.
Okay.
I think, and we'll be actually I'm working on a petition this coming week to get a multitude of the commissioners to sign.
Okay.
To basically giving their support, their blessing for it.
Okay. So are we talking about like a single level? Are we talking about a little bit high rising?
I think it's probably,
like
I think it would have to be
hospital?
3 or 4 story. Yeah.
Okay. So we're talking about like legit hospital.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one of the reasons for that is a lot of these hospitals, a lot of their patients, not the majority, but a lot of their patients are coming from our area.
Yeah.
And it makes sense for them, TriStar as well as St. Thomas Ascension. It makes sense for them economically to have a location where a good portion of their patients are coming from. Makes it easier for the patients.
Right.
Makes it easier for them to deliver health care.
Yeah, I'm not going to say I haven't taken the back roads of Springfield to go to the emergency room before. Maybe stop by the DMV.
I've been to hospitals in Nashville and Springfield myself.
Yeah, most definitely.
So
okay,
I think a lot of people have.
Yeah, it does kind of make sense sometimes.
It makes. I mean, makes sense
depending
for
on
our
your proximity.
community.
Yeah. So, when do you think that, if this happens, how long are we looking? 3 years, 2 years?
I think a couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I think they'll move rather quickly if they get the approval.
Do you think they will get approved?
I think so.
Really?
I'm fairly confident.
All right. Okay. Cool.
I think it'll be great for our area too. I mean,
I think so.
You know, one of the big challenges out in our area, which you're probably well aware of, is, restaurants and shopping,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And I mentioned earlier about density.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Density is really important.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's happened in our community is our average income has crept upwards.
Yeah, we're at what, like 76 right now? Is that right?
No,
Or
I don't
just
think
under
it's
the.
quite that high.
Okay.
But
I sat in an EDC meeting a
right,
while back, and we were creeping because they were talking about the Trader Joe's and the
right.
Costco's and all that
And
other stuff.
that's what they're looking at.
Right.
And another thing that happens, even in our areas that have higher incomes,
Mm-hmm.
there's just not a lot of density in those areas.
Okay.
Okay. So having more, and it makes sense from a company standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for higher discretionary income.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That'll
That's your profit
generate
margin.
more business for
Right.
them, but also that there's more people
Mm-hmm.
that are in that area. So they're looking for, like, within 3 to 5 miles, how many people
Would use
with
us.
this
Yeah.
income will be there.
Mm-hmm.
The more that we have in that area, the better off. So, and that's really the challenge on some of these areas, like a Costco, like a Trader Joe's, like those type of people.
Am I the only one in town that's never walked into a Trader Joe's
You must be.
or a Whole Foods? I just okay.
I think I've been in a Whole Foods once.
Yeah,
But
I don't know. I would rather have more mom and pop restaurants and businesses, and I get it. I mean, I'm in real estate. I get it all. I just know when I go to, like, medium-sized towns, and you go to like a cultural district, and they've got like 15 restaurants, all different. They're all little cool boutiques and whatnot, and you get really, really good food, as
yes,
opposed to something that I got in North Carolina when I was taking my kid to college.
right.
And so my wife and I, we try to find those local hotspots.
Yeah, those are always good.
I know, but I know you need the giant commercial ones, and I get it.
Yeah,
Maybe it's my age.
I think there's a place for both. One of the, I think it was several years ago, Thirsty Goat came to the county.
Yep.
Said we want to, and they talked to us about what they were going to do, and frankly, I didn't know if it was going to work or not. The answer is it's worked, and it's worked great.
He's out of space.
Yes.
Hunter needs more space.
Yeah, and his original concept was coffee and beer,
Mm-hmm.
local beer, and it would be a gathering place. And I thought, well, you're not going to serve food at when they first started, they didn't.
No.
And I thought, but you're not serving food, Hunter.
Yeah.
But
we went there.
How wrong I was on that.
We went there one day, and this was like 2 weeks after he opened, and we saw Hunter and sitting there talking, and he was throwing around some ideas and whatnot, and we're like, yeah, we'll keep coming. And then I think it was like 2 months later, he started serving pizzas.
Right.
And we showed up, and we had a pizza. We're like, Hunter, this pizza is really good.
Yes,
and
it is.
He's like, well, I'm not a pizza place. I was like, bro, yeah, you are.
Yes.
I was like, you can say the public will tell you what you are.
Yes.
But,
which, that the way that has evolved,
mm-hmm.
you can rarely drive by there
and
not see 10 to 15 cars in the lot.
I'm 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And we have to plan it if we're going by there.
Yes.
And I know I'm sitting outside 90% of the time.
Yes, exactly. So that's one of those that, straight.
Exactly.
What you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
There's a place that's moved into the Sango Cafe.
Yep, been there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which
it's Indian food, I believe.
It's Indian food.
Mm-hmm.
It's very good.
Mm-hmm.
Very enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just a lot of opportunities. I agree with the local kind of flavor.
Yeah, most definitely.
I mean, because most people would rather, if I could walk or drive to a short trip, I'd rather do that in my area rather than, I don't want to drive across town. I think most people are like that.
Well, I mean, with all of my clients, I try to point them. We have a relocation guide,
Right.
and we try to point out local businesses because I'd rather come and see, David that owns his restaurant
Right.
and, know you personally and be like, dude, your food is amazing. We'll be back again, that type of thing. Or this is your Sango Tavern. Have you been there?
Yes.
So the guys that bought Sango Tavern, we've been there and played Jeopardy a couple of nights, and they're just good guys trying to figure out business, but they've got their heads on their shoulder. It's really good. Good group of people, and you just want businesses like those to thrive.
Yeah. And then the next block down, you've got Four Brothers
and Caps and stuff.
Caps. Yep. And we've gone to Caps several times, yep. And they both seem to be thriving.
Yep.
So much so that I think it's the New York Butcher shop. I haven't been there yet.
I've been there once. Okay. We got some steaks from there, and I had lunch there one day. It's good. Okay. I mean,
yeah. Those are all beneficial to the area.
Yes. If it doesn't have a nationwide branding, I will go try it and keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, all day long. I mean, that's just me, though.
Yeah, I understand.
All right. So I'm only going to take up a couple more of your minutes because I know you're busy.
Okay.
So what does Clarksville look like in 10 years?
I think it looks a lot bigger. We were at a state conference for county commissioners 2 weeks ago. And when we were there, they showed us some charts.
Okay.
We grew basically at the same pace as Knox County in Tennessee, which is Knoxville.
Right.
Which Knoxville's a lot larger than we are, but we grew the same number. I think we were within 200 people. We grew that.
Wow.
Obviously, that has an impact on Knoxville,
right.
But it has a much greater impact on us.
Right.
I mean, that's huge when you look at some of the things. So I think we're going to be a lot larger.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
Clarksville reminds me of my hometown when I graduated high school. So Columbia, South Carolina. It was about the size Clarksville is right now, maybe a little bit bigger. But now when I go back, there's some parts of town I didn't want to drive through because of traffic and people and just, I mean, it's just almost tripled. It feels like I think they're like 320,000. I think that's correct, and that's in the last 25 years. I mean, that's pretty significant.
If at the current rates, we think we'll be 350,000 or so, 340, 350 by late 2030s,
really?
Something like that. Yeah. Because you look at the amount of growth we've had.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. One of the things that the charts that they gave us at our conference is how Middle Tennessee and there are portions of East Tennessee that are growing at that pace. And areas in West Tennessee are declining at the same time. But we're having a lot of people that are moving here from out of state,
right.
But also people that are moving, say, from West Tennessee to Middle Tennessee. Right. There's a lot of people that are moving here. You see the demographics change. For instance, Alabama now. Typically, if I would ask you what the biggest city in Alabama is, you'd say Birmingham. It's not. It's Huntsville, which, I mean, it's that.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought that several years ago?
I would have thought Birmingham, then Gulf Shores, right? Right around there.
But it's amazing how that's changed. What you're seeing is, for us, we're growing. The fifth largest city in the state. At some point,
I think we're going to be fourth.
Yeah, we'll be fourth, and it really. We'll be fourth depending on how they construe things with Chattanooga.
Right.
But we have a lot more room to grow than some of the other cities do. If you look at the size of Montgomery County, we're a large county as far as land mass.
Right.
And we're the only city in the county, which is a lot different. You look at like Rutherford County, you look at Wilson County, some of those other counties that are around Middle Tennessee, which are growing at great rates too, but they don't have just one city.
Right.
And there's some synergy we have between having one city and the county that makes it easier for us in some respects.
Okay.
I think,
Okay.
because you don't have the battle between, like, for instance, look at Wilson County, you've got Hendersonville and Gallatin, which
Right.
are
Right
growing
there.
right up next to each other. And Hendersonville, frankly, doesn't have a lot of land mass
Right.
because of where they're located on the lake,
Mhm.
and that
They
there's
just
not
got a lot of natural stuff going
right
against them. Yeah.
that prohibit them from
Mhm.
growing at a much higher rate.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. All right. Last question.
uh-oh.
Where are you in 5 years?
Where am I in
Are
5
you
years?
still doing this on the commission, or are you just like, you know what, babe, let's go. Let's go find some island.
No, I'm probably, I have a daughter that's just finished up her junior year at Austin P.
Mhm.
We're probably still here. I'm probably still doing this. I hope to continue to serve, because one of the things that I found out about, and I don't want to leave them unsolved, because I think I ascribe greatly to this idea that I want to leave things better
Oh yeah.
than what I found them. So I want things to be a lot better.
But you're moving at the pace of government.
Yes, and that is a very hard reality. When you're in business, you know this.
Yeah.
You can, if something doesn't work today, starting tomorrow, you can do something different.
I
Right?
can implement change and
Right. You
processes
can do
and
that.
whatnot.
In government, and that was one of the biggest adjustments for me personally. Like, well, if this is not working, we'll just do this. I said, well, David, you can't do that. It's like, well, why can't we do that? It's like, here's this list of
Right.
reasons why you can't do that.
I mean, it was designed so that the slow-moving ship can't be turned on a dime. I get it.
I mean, the good news is I think we have good leadership.
Yeah.
And that's very important. And people that see the picture as a whole, which is helpful.
Mhm.
I serve on a lot of committees, so I see a lot of different things. I think most of the ones that I serve on, I think we've made a lot of progress.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So you go from sitting here to over there
Yes.
most days or half the time?
I tell people it's a part-time job that takes a full-time, basically, of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of stuff we have to do.
Yeah.
And
It's hard to
committee meetings, committees don't run themselves.
Yeah.
You have to be there. I think last night there was a meeting for Ascension. Daughter called me because she's an intern for the county mayor. Said, "Are you going to be at this meeting?" I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to be at the agricultural extension meeting."
Yeah.
I said, "I'm on that committee." I said, "Well, why are you going to be there?" I said, "Because if I'm not here, we don't have a quorum for the meeting. And I'm not going to do that to those other people that serve on our meeting." So
you can't just tell her cuz.
Right.
They tend to frown upon that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I appreciate you sitting down with me.
I appreciate it too. And the other thing is, a lot of times, and I'll sum up with this because a lot of people ask me this.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, we have a very vocal minority people. I'd say it's less than 10% in our county that want things to stay exactly the way they are today. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, and they say we need to stop all development. We need to stop all that. And what I tell them every time they talk to me is I say, well, there's about 25 to 30% of our workforce in this county that's associated with the building industry and with real estate. Mm-hmm. I said, if we were to do that, which I think would be a very bad idea, we would immediately unemploy 25 to 30% of our workforce. And our community would suffer greatly from that.
Our economy would
take a nosedive, mm-hmm. and all those sort of things.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's anything that's going to happen here,
right,
at all. Because I think we have wiser folks than that. So
that's good.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the time.
I appreciate it, man.
Thanks.